What's up, everybody? Welcome to CFP Talks. My name is Joe Nissim. With me, as always, is Mr. David Fuchs. And today
What's
is a
up, Joe?
very, very special episode because
That's
we
right.
actually get to know the man behind CFP Talks, Mr. David Fuchs.
That's right.
And today we're going to get to know David. We've obviously did a couple episodes where you guys got to know me a little bit, but today we're going to talk to David and get to learn about this mysterious man with his beard and his hair and all the stuff behind it. So David,
And
first off, start by telling me, like, you got into this business very young. So what was kind of the trigger, like going into college and coming out of college, that it was like, I'm going into finance. I definitely want to go there.
well, I didn't. So I didn't.
You
So
didn't?
I
Oh,
started
man.
off in broadcast. Yeah. So get to know me. So I started off in broadcast journalism. I wanted to be like a sports media personality. I did that for 18 months, living in other parts of the country. Not a lot. And listen, to be just totally honest with you, I'm not living where I want to live. I wasn't living in the New York metropolitan area, which is where all my family and friends are. Number one. Number two, money wasn't that great. I didn't see that much prospects moving forward. So I said, all right, let me move back home and figure it out.
Where were you?
Arkansas, Fort Smith, Arkansas.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Wow. So
But
very
I love
far
it.
from
But I
you.
love it there. Yeah, yeah. But I love that place. Love that state. Love the people I met there. I still keep in touch with them. Unfortunately, just it wasn't a realistic future for me, living wise and career wise. So came back and I was like, you know what? I want to do something that's gonna fulfill me. I want to do something where obviously the earnings potential is a little higher and something that is a little bit more, you know, core stable.
I didn't know you
So
wanted to be Stephen A. Smith. I mean, it makes sense, you
pretty
know?
much like I would say like Stephen A is a long stretch. I would say more like Colin Cowherd or like Francesa. Like that's kind of what I was looking to
Like
do.
New York sports radio personality
Yeah,
like
like
that.
commenting, not like reporting on stuff,
Going
but
in
whatever.
on like first take every now and then and doing that.
Yeah,
That's actually very cool. So how did you end up at your first job?
I ended up at Equitable, which is where I
Yeah.
met the aforementioned Sydney Misra. We
Yeah.
sat literally right next to each other when I first started. He helped me on the Equitable internal wholesaling desk. So I was wholesaling annuities to advisors. And that's how I got started in the industry. I think I was 24 when I started. So,
So
I don't
young.
I yeah, young, but sometimes so I was there for 3 years, then went to well, let me throw it back to you. That's where I started
Okay. So
at
then,
on the sales desk.
but when I met you, you were not at Equitable.
I was not. I was not. I was on the
You were
I
at
was
BNY.
I was at BNY. So went
Okay.
internal at Equitable, wholesaling annuities. I realized I didn't want to get pigeonholed in the annuity insurance space. So, but I wasn't, but I always kind of knew I wanted to be an advisor. I wanted to be on the advising side, but I didn't feel totally comfortable making that jump directly from being an internal wholesaler at an annuity company over to being an advisor. I felt like I needed more knowledge and experience in the investing side, the capital markets. I couldn't talk capital markets. I had no idea what an emerging market was. I was like, what the hell is that? Um,
Oh God,
I
those
didn't
first
know.
couple of years, you're just bombarded with terminology and you feel so dumb.
Yeah, and I didn't, and all I knew was the guaranteed income rider and a structured note. I was like, that's not going to cut it if I'm speaking to a client. I
Right.
wanted to feel confident and comprehensive and efficient when I'm talking to somebody. And when I'm talking to somebody, like I can't, like a lot of people, I feel like you can go into a conversation, you just BS your way through it. I
Mm.
feel dirty. I want to know and be confident and genuine when I'm speaking to somebody. So I said, you know what? I need to brush up on my skills in terms of the capital market, the investment. And I wanted a little bit of a pay raise too. So left there, went to the BNY Mellon internal desk, which is mutual funds, ETFs, SMAs. I was like, perfect. That's most of the investment vehicles that you're going to have to know when you're talking to clients outside of individual stocks and bonds. So went there. I was at Equitable for 3.5 years. I was at BNY for two. I started in the pandemic. March of 2020 was my first day, March 16th, 2020. Literally the day the world shut down.
Wow.
And I got my I always say this, I love BNY, I really did. I always say I went there knowing that it was kind of a bridge job.
But
I wasn't going
did it fill the knowledge gap though for you?
100,000%.
Yeah.
If I didn't go there, I wouldn't have known half the stuff I know now in terms of the investment side. And listen, like my job now is where wealth management, where we talk about so many things. Investments is like 10% of it. We talk, tax planning, retirement planning, estate planning, etc. But it did well verse me in the stuff that I felt like I didn't know that I needed to. So it
So
was
when
a
did
great
you
job to have.
start? But when did you start getting the itch to be like, this is great, but I actually want to talk to people because, from that side of the business, it is kind of impersonal, right? Because you're never really dealing with the end user per
No,
se.
right.
And I know that feeling of like, I kind of want to deal with the end user. I want that satisfaction of I have a solution for your problem and I want to put this together. You kind of had that a little bit at AXA, but you didn't feel like you had the knowledge. You go to BNY. When did you really start getting the itch that made you say, you know what, I'm out?
I would say like it was honestly like I hate to say this, it was before I got there. Like when
Mm,
I was at Equitable, I was really thinking about how do I make the transition from here to being an advisor. I always knew I wanted to do that. I was doing personal finance for myself. I was doing personal finance for my friends, some people in my family. That was always where I felt like I would be the most fulfilled. And that was always where I felt like I would be able to be the most successful because I genuinely enjoy talking to people about their finances, how they can clean things up, and then educating them. So I had the itch. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go to BNY. I want to get my knowledge up on what I want to, the capital markets and investing, but I'll have an open mind. I'll say, all right, maybe I do want to go out into the field and wholesale mutual funds, or maybe I wanted to go into key accounts, which was something that I
mm.
always looked into. Very quickly, I realized I do not want to stay in distribution. Specifically, I do not want to stay in distribution with mutual funds.
Right.
And
I found it funny about one thing you said. I'm sorry to cut you off. You always were helping your friends and family. I always find it funny that a lot of FAs always end up, that's kind of their inkling, their itch is like, I made this spreadsheet for myself and then I just shared it with 25 of my friends of like,
right.
this is how I budget. And, I have a
Yep.
10% rule of this goes here and this goes here and this goes here. And then you end up going, like, this is very satisfying for me to talk to people about this. And
It
I'm not getting
was
paid for it. And I still feel the satisfaction.
exactly. Yeah. I had friends, hey, how do you invest your 401k? Do you have a Roth IRA or traditional? What's the difference between them again? What do you do with your savings? What do you do with your debt? Whatever it was, I was obviously doing that for free. But I always felt so good after those conversations. And that's when I knew I was like, that's what I need to be doing. And I know that there's going to be there's obviously going to be somewhat of a learning curve and there's going to take time to, break into there and be successful. But I was like, that's where I want to be. I felt like for the long term, I didn't want to wholesale annuities for 25, 30 years. I didn't want to wholesale mutual funds and do that for 25, 30 years. But I was like, I could see myself doing this for the 25, 30 years, which is the personal finance stuff that we talked about. So what I would say I was at BNY from March 2020 till the end of 2022. So what is that, 2 years and
Yeah,
change,
yeah, two and
like ish?
change.
I knew pretty quickly, I would say with like easily within the first 6 to 8 months, like my plan was I have a good job, paid well. We was very flexible at that time because we were still in the middle of COVID.
Yeah, I remember that.
And so I was working from home pretty much for the first year and a half. And
What a
that's when I decided,
transition.
yeah, it was
What a
crazy.
transition.
No, it was
Wow.
crazy. I went from Equitable 5 days in the office to completely home for the first year and a half, and or probably more than that, being at BNY. Here's a silver lining there though. After about 8 months, I want to say, maybe ish, 8 months, maybe 6 to 8 months, I said, all right, I'm already plotting my next move because I know I don't want to be here. And when I say here, I mean wholesaling, specifically funds. I started doing the CFP and I started doing the coursework at home. And ultimately, I ended up taking the exam pretty much, March 2022, which was, a little bit after a couple of years after I started there. But that was, how I kind of said, the first move I need to do before looking for jobs is let me get the CFP, put that on my resume. That'll help me find a job. That'll give me a little bit more, that'll make me a little bit more attractive
So why the CFP?
because
Because I know a lot of people when they come to me, they're like, I looked at CHFC, CHLU, and you're coming from an insurance background, you know, and I know you eventually you want to make it to the advisement side. So, but if I go to the American College's website, there's 20,
biggest what is
20
all that other stuff? Nobody knows what the CRPC, and I'm sorry, I'm not dogging on those letters. They're
right.
great. But the CEWA and the CPXA and the CEXP and the CRPC. I mean, those are great, I guess, to have, but nobody knows what those are. We always say it all the time. All these advisors that get these exams, they're just putting letters at the end of their name. They're playing alphabet soup. The CFP is the golden standard, in my opinion. CFP is people know what it is. I'm talking
Especially,
about
especially now with the way the
especially
board.
now with the way that the board is advertising the letters and the way that um clients, everyday people, they know what the CFP is. They say, "Oh, my advisor, he's a CFP," or "Oh, are you a CFP? Do you have that designation?" No one's asking you if you have the CRPC because no one knows what it is. This is the golden standard. And here's the thing, all those other ones are very concentrated in like certain specific things that, I'm sure they're great and I'm sure it's great to know. CFP is comprehensive amongst everything. And, estate planning, retirement planning, tax planning, insurance planning, everything. It encompasses everything. And it's not like it's a mile long and an inch deep. It goes deep into all those things too. So it's
Yeah.
not like you could say like, oh, okay, you have this designation where it encompasses all these different subjects, but how deep does it really go? It has all the important subjects that you're going to need to know as an advisor. And I can tell you firsthand, the stuff on that exam absolutely comes into play when you ultimately, break into the advisory space.
Immediate results.
Immediately, first two
Yeah.
weeks. And
Yeah.
I know I want to flip over to part two in a minute and we'll talk about that,
Well,
but
you're not
immediately,
producing this episode. I am. I'm executive producer Brian Cranston on this episode of Breaking Bad. Okay.
but in the part two, like immediately, first 2 weeks, started my new role in January 23, like 18 months ago, whatever it was. First 2 weeks, stuff from the exam. I'm like,
What is
that's why I
how
took it.
I'll tell you, it is, I thought, like, what a great feeling when you walk into a room after you've taken CFP, past CFP, right? And you walk in, and then an advisor that you're working with asks something, and then you ask this, like, a great question. And the client goes, hmm, I've never thought of that. Like, how satisfying is that feeling to feel like I actually know what I'm talking about? Like,
Yeah.
I just did something good. I actually handled this meeting.
Well, that's part of the fulfillment because listen, like when you're on the wholesaling side, that's straight sales,
Hmm.
right? These advisors that you're selling to, they know all these I mean, listen, all the products are a little bit different, but for the most part, they know the vehicle. They know what an annuity is. They know what a mutual fund is. They know what an ETF is. They're just looking for the right person to do business with and the right product to ultimately use, right? There's no fulfillment there. I got zero fulfillment from being on the wholesaling side.
Yeah.
When you're talking to a client and something comes up about, I don't know, whatever, AMT, estimated taxes, different types of state trusts, um, you know, time value of money, which I know Joe obviously loves. That's actually helpful. You're actually impacting somebody's life, and you're actually impacting their situation and making their life easier. As opposed to, oh yeah, we have this mutual fund or we have this ETF. Here's the performance, here's the Sharpe ratio. Do you need anything else? That is the ultimate fulfillment. And especially when I learned that it's not like, oh, I just know that because it was something that you have to know, or I just read about it in an article or on Twitter or whatever. When I look back and I'm like, oh, I got that knowledge directly from taking the exam, directly from Joe helping me pass this exam. I mean, it's very hard to top that.
My third meeting after I passed CFP, somebody gets an ISO. They
Yep.
they wait a
That's
year,
another thing.
right?
Yeah.
They wait a year and they go, we're just waiting on the excuse me, they
Just
waited.
to get past 12 months so they can get the
Yeah,
preferential
so
tax treat. Yeah.
they waited 2 years from the grant date and they go, oh, we're right now we're gonna exercise them, we're gonna sell them right away because we waited the 2 years. I said, whoa, 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 whoa. Guys, that's not how that works because you'll lose your ISO status. And they go, what do you mean? We waited the 2 years. I said, no, 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 no. If you do that, I said, just check on this. And that was kind of my way of saying, hey, like pump the
You're
brakes
wrong,
for a
but I'm not going to
second.
straight tell you you're wrong.
Exactly. And I was going to say,
Yeah.
I just want you guys to check that this is not the case because if you do that, you'll lose it. And they went back and asked, I guess, somebody in their
Or
HR
their HR.
or somebody
Yeah.
at work, and they go, holy crap, thank you so much. You literally just saved us 40 grand in taxes. And they instantly became a client, and
Yep.
they were a hell of a client too. They were like asset wise in terms of like,
Yeah.
it was very meaningful for me at the time, especially because it was a big client. I was still pretty young in the business. But I remember going, CFP just paid for itself right there.
Oh yeah.
One
Oh
moment.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
100%. And listen, like I also, again, I'm at BNY. I have a lot of time on my hands because I may not know this, but when you're a mutual fund internal wholesaler, not a lot of people want to talk to you. And these advisors are not picking up the phone for you. No matter what the managers are telling you, how many dials
Yeah.
you have to make, they're not answering for you. It's impossible to get people on the phone.
Yeah.
I had a lot of, and I was working from home, so I had a lot of time. Sorry to the people that whatever,
Sorry,
but
BNY.
I was doing this during the day.
No,
I was
yeah.
like, I have all this time in my hands. I'm going to use it productively. I'm not going to sit here surfing the internet or making complete BS dials. I'm going to do something productive that I think can actually help me in my career. So as I'm going through, I'm like, I need to get this because these are the types of things anyone can talk to you about the S&P 500. Anybody can talk to you about use this ETF, use that ETF for this type of exposure. That's not value. You right there talking about the ISOs and saving the money in taxes or talking about different types of equity compensation or different types of trusts, that's valuable. And I knew that in order to kind of differentiate myself and actually add value to a client, I needed to get the CFP, but not just to put the letters next to the name. Because, and we talk about it all the time, I think a lot of people just get the letters just to get the letters, and they're playing scramble. Let
Mm.
me just take this exam and I'll get the C or whatever just to put it next to my name. And so I can try and buff it up and impress a client. You impress it because they don't know anything. You impress a client when you actually add value and you actually educate them on these things.
Oh,
And
it's incredible. The way that they look at you, the way that they interact with you completely changes. They're not arguing with you over your fees. They're not arguing with you. They're like, in fact, we think your fees are pretty reasonable. Actually, we thought it was going to be more expensive. And that in and of itself is such a compliment when somebody's like, oh, I thought it would be more expensive.
Yeah.
You know?
And not only that, we talked about it last time. If you can bring them all this knowledge, and it's not even really knowledge. I always like to say I like to educate clients, and then they make whatever decisions they want. Most of the time, if you educate them, they don't really, a lot of clients, they're not doing this every day. So they're not studying this stuff. They don't have experience with it. So a lot of times they will take your advice. That will overcome because you can't control the market.
Right.
No one can control who's controlling the S&P 500, like who's controlling the internet, like whatever, the bond market. You bringing them the advice that you brought your client on the ISOs overcame any type of down market
Correct.
where there may have been some poor performance. You can overcome that
Well,
easily.
well, here's the thing is that clients don't leave advisors for bad performance. Clients leave advisors because you didn't care.
Yeah,
And that
or
was
you gave terrible advice.
yeah, and that was one thing one of my senior partners, a guy by the name of Tom Conway, used to
Yeah.
always say to me. He's like, clients, he's like, stop being so performance focused because they
Yeah.
don't care as much as you think they care.
Hmm.
What they care about is constantly giving them good advice because when somebody sits there and logically thinks about it, they're like, Joe doesn't control the market, right? But if I can teach a client, here's how the market works, and here's how we position you to take advantage of up markets and to protect you in down markets, knowing that there's never gonna be a world where you're not gonna have a negative return one year. It's gonna happen. We have to be ready for it, right?
100%.
And there's something about that uh honesty, the transparency, the just the realism of here's how it is. So here's how we plan for it. That makes a client feel like you're not just bullshitting me on some performance metric that I don't care about. I don't care about the trainer ratio. You worry about that. I don't want to worry about that. Right. Like when like you go to a doctor and they tell you, well, you're this ratio. What do I need to do? Just tell me what I need to do.
Just tell me what I got to
Should I
do.
stop eating red meat
Uh,
or should I stop
yeah,
eating eggs because my
right.
cholesterol's high? Cool. But if you're
Yeah.
sitting here quoting the HDL to LDL ratio and telling me the ranges, it means it's honestly Latin to me. Like I
No,
don't know what you're
right.
talking about. But tell
100%.
me what the action item is and why we're doing it, and then I'll take care of the rest. But that way, like that's where the doctor starts to build trust with me. Is like, Joe, like, look, this is gonna affect you in a very dangerous way. And if you don't do something, you need to change this. And here's why, because this is gonna happen or this is gonna happen. And now I'm like, okay, like this person actually gets where I'm coming from or understands how I'm gonna approach this. And they're being realistic with me.
Yeah, I mean, I always think back, and I have two things I want to mention before we just wrap this up. But there's a great client. Um, we help him with a lot of different things. Equity compensation, estate planning, all that stuff. We are showing him performance for his accounts, which again, our conversations makes up about 10, maybe 15% of what we talk about. It's not where we focus. 2023, obviously great year for the market. S&P was up 20+% or whatever. His allocation, we're not in a passively managed S&P fund. We're in individual stocks and bonds. Performance, I think, was like 14% in 2023, which there's a lot of clients out there that would be like, well, why am I underperforming the S&P 500? Why, I could just go put myself in an index fund. Client, educate them, do so much more outside of the investments. Client's response to that performance, you want to know what it was? Again, about 8 to 9 points below the S&P 500. He goes
Outstanding.
like, he said, I'll take that. We say you're about 14% last year. He said, I'll take that every single year.
Well, yeah,
And I
who
said,
wouldn't?
that, and I said, And I said, yeah, but a lot of clients would be like, well, why was I 8% under the five S&P 500? Like they don't know.
Because a third of your portfolio's in bonds. That's why.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So I was like, that is a great client. And let me just go back to the wholesaling part real quick because, obviously I talked about wanting to get out of that part of the business. There were a lot of skills that I took from that job,
Right.
specifically client service.
Yeah,
I learned
that's
how to
big.
speak to clients. I learned about the tone. I learned how to project yourself. I learned phone skills, presenting skills, but most importantly, client service. That to me, that's the biggest thing. You have a lot of clients that need your attention, that want your attention. They just want you to be communicative with them. Those are the number one things that I learned at that, being on the internal wholesaling job.
Well, let's stop it right there because I want to talk to you more about your current role, how you studied, and so on. We're going to bring it back for part two, guys, and we will see you guys in that video.